when you think about 21st century, what's the first country you think about? China. I think about China. In fact, Chinese growth, right? If we have to compare it to other forms of growth, like the Industrial Revolution, is roughly about 100 times faster and 10 times larger than the United Kingdom's or Britain's Industrial Revolution. So look at the magnitude. 100 times faster and 10 times larger. China's middle class is growing to over a quarter billion. And just in the past 5 years, China passed a 50% urbanization, as you probably are well aware of. Why is this important? We're going to get there. In fact, the rate of urbanization in China today is the highest rate that we are seeing in the wider global connectivity, if we have to look at that map. I really like this. Anybody has seen this before? No. All right, don't be bothered with the numbers. From 2011 to 2013, China poured more cement in its economy. Go to Dalian, Chongqing, Beijing, other places, look at the rise of all these buildings. So the amount of cement China used just in 3 years, between 2011 to 2013, was more than the amount of cement the United States used in the past 100 years. You know, we always say there are scales. There is a large scale and there is China scale. So there's a new vocabulary you have to add. So there is large scale and there's China scale. What's important today is the average income, this is in particular China, but very true with the broader emerging market, is moving away from $200 per average income in 1978 to over $6,000 right now in 2016, and this rate is growing also immensely. Today we're looking at the GDP per capita and the growth of GDP per capita. Darker GDP per capita means $25,000 per year or plus. This is a GDP per capita, right? Now, as you're seeing that the world that was not darker, which means the GDP per capita was lower, over the course of the past 40 years is increasingly becomes more prosperous. Increasingly becomes more prosperous. I'm a very, very big fan of this slide. Forget about the numbers. How many of you have children? How many are hopeful about your children's future? You have not that I know they are troublemakers, but how many of you are hopeful about their future? If you are, raise your hand. You're not hopeful? Your kids are not going to be good? Let me try that again. How many of you have kids? Okay? How many do you have? Just one? How many do you have?
Everybody.
One? Everybody just one?
Yeah.
We all have one? One child policy? Alright, so. My mother always tells me, I wish there was a one-child policy because after you, I would not want to have any other kids. So my mom always tells me that. And the number of you, in fact, the number of Asians, number of Middle Easterns that are hopeful about our children's future is much more than what you see in America. So we are more optimistic. Emerging markets are more optimistic about their children's future. This is aspiration. A hope for a better future. If I tell you the majority of executive learnings that we have in this country is not from CEOs of this country or managers of this country, which means the aspiration and that hope is going down here in the United States. Do not undermine the optimism of the future. Optimism is not a feeling. Optimism or hope is economic currency. Societies, countries that are more optimistic, they tend to have higher economic growth. And here, as you say, one of the most optimistic countries that I can find out in the emerging worlds and developed worlds is China. In fact, in the age of aspiration, this is interesting. If you look at the questions, when children in countries today grow up, will they be more financially better off than their parents? Asia thinks your kids are going to be better off. Africa thinks their kids are going to be better off. Latin America thinks, Middle East with all the trouble, terrorism and conflicts and everything, they think the kids are going to be better off over there. And here in America and in Europe, ladies and gentlemen, I am not telling you statistics. I am telling you about economic currency of the future. I am telling you the most important part of a GDP growth, which is indeed aspiration. Any questions? Any comments?
So
yes?
How can you get the data information?
How can you get them?
Yes.
You mean how can you get the slides, or how do we get this?
The data.
Oh, how do they get the data?
Yes.
Okay, this is part of the Pew Research, right? The sample population of the Pew Research is asking individuals, okay, what do you think your kids will have better financial backing and support than you have had when you grew up? The answer in these sample populations has been yes. But here's, and also part of the reason why. Because if you look at, for example, these societies, right, typically, Africa, Asia, Latin America, don't look at Shanghai. Let's travel, go to, sake of an argument, Urumqi, or let's go to Tehran. Let's go to places that 20 years ago, economic opportunities for our parents was not as good as economic opportunities for us. So part of the reason is also growth of economy. And part of it is also because in the United States, it was a service economy, right? But today, the service economy is putting pressure on salaries and on wages. So part of it is because these economies happen to be more advanced. And today, the kid coming out of college in the United States is not going to be guaranteed a job for the next 20 years. Is going to have a very fragile, very shaky job, maybe for 2 years, maybe for 3 years. Yeah? But still, this is really key. What they're saying is education still remains. So you should be thanking Shougang, and you should be thanking FESCO that you are here. Because still, education, and I would argue continuing education, ranks on the first portion of that economic aspiration. And followed by, oh, we have to work hard. Followed by, you need to know the right people. Followed by, you have to be a bit lucky. Followed by, you have to, well, if you are a male, you have to come from a good family, or you have to have some wealth, or marry somebody that has money. You can always do that. And last but not least, give bribes. So this is going to go down significantly. And this is typically coming from very developing countries, not emerging markets, right? So little optimism for the next generations in advanced economy. China not only is taking economic growth from the West, you are taking hope out of the West as well. That's a huge, huge political problem. We'll talk about it here in a bit as well. So I'm going to go through the. By the way, I can give you these slides if you want to have them. I'll be more than happy to give them to you. Ladies and gentlemen, whatever course you're studying, whether strategic management at CATS, whether you're doing financial accounting, whatever you're doing, case studies, you like it, you don't like it, you go to Detroit, visit the factory, you go to the outlet to go shopping. Pay attention in your career, pay attention to 4 things. Just 4 things. And the 4 things that I have up here for you. How the world is producing services, steel, and ideas. So, services, goods, and ideas. Pay attention how the world is connecting. Just look at this table. I don't mean connecting this way. I mean also connecting via Uber, high-speed railway, using a FedEx or whatever to send mails or parcels and so on and so forth, right? Also look at how the world is consuming, not just eating, education, services, and last but not least, how we're living. So, if you want to be successful in your job, whether it happens to be about projection for financial projections for your division within Shougang, or thinking about the next trend of investment for your company, or mergers and acquisitions, and so on and so forth, pay attention to these 4 factors: production, consumption, connections, and also how the world is living. In terms of producing, just look at the manufacturing outputs. I just want to give you a sense. Is the North America's and the rest of the world, North America and Europe's manufacturing output is decreasing significantly from 1990 to 2013, and the rest of the world and China is increasing significantly. So these trends are important. Today, if this was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I would say the most successful airline in the world is Pan Am. Pan Am was one of the most successful airlines in the world. Today, the most successful airline in the world are Emirates. In fact, do you want to know, how many of you like football or soccer? Alright, do you want to know the most successful airlines? Just look at Barcelona's shirt, look at Bayern Munich's shirt, see what companies are advertising. Qatar Airlines, Emirates, Turkish Airlines. Turkish out of Istanbul. So the world's multinationals are shifting. No longer a Pan Am. We got a Dubai-based airline called Emirates. We got a Doha-based airline called Qatar Airways. We got a Istanbul-based airline called Turkish Airlines. So it is significantly changing. In terms of that, also take a look at, for example, pharmaceutical industry. There's a huge shift in the pharmaceutical industry. If I look at the growth in pharmaceutical industry, I see a landscape for opportunities and growth. By the way, I am willing to bet. Remember this day, April of 2017. My name is Roos. Remember, I just told you. By April of 2022, your company, Shougang, will be in the pharmaceutical business in Africa.
I won't feel surprised.
And some of you, in fact, might be in Africa. I give you a very, very good example. Are you familiar with AVIC, Aviation Industry Corporation of China? They build airplanes. AVIC. I advised AVIC back in 2011 in New York City. The CEO of AVIC US told me, "Hey Roos, I have an interesting project for you." I said, "Okay, that should be interesting. What is an interesting project?" I figured it's AVIC, it has to be about aviation. No, it was building a bridge in a country in Eastern Africa called Tanzania. AVIC was building bridges connecting the old town to the new town. I was laughing in 2011. Now AVIC is one of the largest real estate owners in Tanzania. As Shougang will be one of probably largest investors in Africa's pharmaceutical. All right. Hold up your phones. Where's your cell phones? Can I see your mobiles? You got your phone? 4 out of the top 5 best-selling mobiles today are built in South Korea or China. In fact, how many of you have an Apple phone? Take out the cover. Take the cover out. Take it out. Take the cover. Okay. Read behind it. What does it say? Say it one more time. Designed in California, assembled in China. Do you know what this will say in 5 years? Designed in China, assembled in Africa. The second thing you laughed at, but just wait. Just in 4 or 5 years. Alright? So, essentially what I am trying to show you is the most successful players today, the most successful growth we're seeing in companies today is happening in China. Big time. Or as Mr. Trump says, big league. Emerging market companies have grown so much. Just look at Shougang. Look at other companies within China. Look at the Eastern multinationals. They have grown so much. In fact, much more than any other companies that have in the past, I would argue, a decade and a half. Let's look at the other thing, connection. I am Iranian. I spent a good bit of time in Iran. Your ambassador in Tehran, capital of Iran, told me this. You took a strategic management course, right? Yes. Right. Don't tell your professor. Amateurs talk strategy. Professionals talk logistics. In fact, you don't believe me? Ask your president. What's China's dream? One belt, one road. There is a China proverb. You want to build wealth, build a road. What's Mr. Trump's dream? Build a wall. Right. So, I'm a very, very big fan of OBOR. Are we all familiar with OBOR? Do you know what OBOR is? One belt, one road? We call them OBOR. Alright? So, in fact, what Xi Jinping is going to invest in OBOR is going to revitalize. You know, this is something really interesting. The next wave of intervention is not going to countries with military, it's economics. The next wave of intervention is economic intervention. Not sending troops anymore. This is the future of intervention. I'm going to go through this, but I'm not going to bore you with this. By the way, people get this confused. So this is the one road, this is the one belt. So the marine is the one belt, and this is the one road. This initiative.